So the way we start this off, Tom, is typically I say, start us off, Carter.
Hmm.
And this is where Carter starts us off.
Because we're live. I know how it goes.
Tom picked up on it.
You tried to pick. You got me
Hold
with
on.
this the first time I was on here, but you ain't getting me this time.
Did I get you? Did I do that first time?
Yeah, you did.
Huh?
Yeah, you did.
Hi everyone. It's King Kong, from the King Kong YouTube channel. Listen, there's been a lot of stuff said about me in the press lately. My agent strongly advised me not to make a video about it, but he didn't say I couldn't make monkey sounds about it.
Yeah, we're live here with the controversial King Kong. He's been accused of going apeshit and committing some really heinous monkey business. We're here to get his take on what could be the canopy or the forest floor of his career.
And all right, I'm dropping a bit because
canopy or forest floor.
That is what.
Of
Yes, exactly.
Is a great. That's a great one.
That literally just came to me in my head.
That belongs in a textbook under how to plus someone else's joke. Well done, sir.
I got you, bro. I got you.
I literally, 15 minutes before this, while eating dinner, was like, wouldn't it be funny if King Kong did the Miranda Sings bit, but in monkey noises? And you somehow built off of that.
I didn't know that's what you were going with it, but sure.
That's a whole thing that happened.
Oh my god.
Yeah, for some reason Tom was like, let me explain that whole drama, and I'm like, weird episode of Castpod.
No. I watched a reaction video on that video, and I don't even have the heart to watch the whole thing. Like the whole original video.
Fair enough. So what are we actually doing today?
We're here with Tom because we decided to replace Calum semi-temporarily.
Calum's in his good old-fashioned England.
Yep. He's on probation for being British.
True.
That sounds slightly racist, but all right.
What? No, we're not litigating this on air.
Yeah. And you know what I think when I think of Tom?
Do you think of Kevin?
I mean, I think of tall, dark, and handsome, but...
Dark might be a little...
Your hair's dark.
I am pale as a ghost.
Your hair is dark, though, so...
Fair.
Plus, it's Florida. You'll get it.
You're doxing me on Castpod, that's fine.
What were you saying, Kevin? The entire state. One of the largest states
state of
in
Florida.
The country.
Yeah. Somewhere in the bayou of Florida.
Yes, I'm hiding in the swamp.
We have it. I don't remember when it came out, but there was moons ago. Some would say many moons ago.
Many moons.
Look at that. Where Tom was on, I think it was the most recent series of Castpod ranks, where we would rank things.
God, yeah. That was before I even moved in with Aaron. It's crazy.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's like a hot minute and a half ago.
That was like 2020, 2021.
Yeah. And that's something we're looking to bring back once Calum's returning from Canada or wherever he is. I don't know. I don't pay enough attention of his life when he's not directly in front of me. I kid. I obsess over everyone else's lives except for my own. Yes, I'm positive that I do that. And we were talking about everyone's favorite monster series, Boulder Snorf and Friends. That's right. It's been a couple years, and I still remember when Tom, for context, Tom cut out when we would rank these types of creatures. And
oh my God,
yeah. He would be the one explaining what's going on. And for one, he just straight up cut out. And because of our lack of editing abilities, it just poked Bean right in the face. I decided to take over in improv with Calum.
It was good improv.
Thank you. So whoever Boulder Snorf is actually, I still call him Boulder Snorf. And Friends...
I don't think it was anybody important.
Probably not. And Friends is because he was friends with a lot of Tom's favorite types of creatures. The kaiju. Some would say you can follow him on Twitch at twitch.tv/KaijuCatcher757.
Oh, appreciate the plug.
I got you. I try and plug as much as possible I can. Just like Harper the podcast. But we're gonna talk a little bit about big old mega monsters.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Tom is what you would call an expert.
I would say so. I definitely know.
You know more than the average Joe.
Than the average person. I don't know everything. I was never on a production of a kaiju movie, but I've seen almost every. I think I have seen every Godzilla movie, the exception of one. But I own that one, and I'm planning on watching it this week.
Nice.
So played monster games.
Oh yeah.
Monster animes, everything. Anything that has a big monster in it, I'm watching it, 100%.
You know what anime has a lot of big monsters in it? Have you seen One Piece?
No. I really thought you were going to go the Kenny Mac route and preach to me about Attack on Titan because they're monsters, but
honestly,
no, I didn't know there were monsters in One Piece. I assumed there were, but
yeah. There's also like just people that happen to be like 20 feet tall.
Big old pirate adventure. Of course, there's at least a giant squid.
Yes, but yeah. Before we continue about the monsters, and Kenny Mac can call me out on this, I don't care enough about Attack on Titan.
You're gonna be mad at you, bro.
I don't care.
He's already mad at me.
When is he not mad at you?
That's true.
That's
That's how not mad at everyone.
Yeah,
I can tell when he's never been really actually mad at me, but I think he gets all of his fake rage out, and that's what makes him not as angry.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, we're talking about monsters.
We're talking about monsters.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to focus a little bit on just the different types there are and all that fun monster crap. So,
hell yeah.
Let's start at the beginning. In the beginning, when God created monsters,
it's true.
Which one is your favorite, Tom?
My favorite monster ever?
Favorite monster ever. Well, from like the Godzilla kaiju verse.
Be the big man himself.
Jesus?
I love him. No.
Oh.
So I was gonna say Adam as a joke, but then you asked about Godzilla universe. No, Godzilla always. He'll always be my favorite. 100%. If it wasn't him, it would either be Titanosaurus or I'm just gonna say I think Mechagodzilla 3.
Mechagodzilla 3.
He's got a sword.
Suck at Mechagodzilla 2 and 1.
You laugh, but those are monsters. I guess
I
Mechagodzilla 3's
so.
real name is Kiryu, but in the movies. But yeah, so I know a lot about Godzilla monsters. So do you want me to give a history? How do you want me to do this?
I don't know, Tom. We barely plan these things.
I'm modeling
honestly,
it off of what. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'd be down for history, because I'm someone who's kind of gotten into this monster game relatively early.
Relatively early, like the 1960s?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm very old. I just...
That's not early. That's late.
Oh, well... So, no. I mean, like, I started watching them regularly around the 2015 Godzilla movie, which, funnily enough, I wasn't that big a fan of. But then I liked literally everyone after that, so I was like, oh, I guess I like.
Oh boy, me and you agree on a monster thing, on a monster topic.
Honestly,
it's gonna be later in the podcast because I have some problems with that movie.
2015 Godzilla, I didn't think it was bad.
2014.
But I definitely slept on it a little bit at first, and the person that convinced me to watch it was my dad, because he really enjoyed it.
It's pretty good. I enjoy it, but when I first saw it, I was definitely in that, oh my god, they ruined it kind of mentality. But we'll get to that. So I guess I'll start with history. So I'm gonna stick to mainly Godzilla. I know a little bit about like the King Kong history. I know Carter probably knows more about that than I do. I know a little bits and pieces of like monster movies before like the 40s. But yeah, most of my knowledge is in Godzilla and Suitmation movies, and like I have some knowledge of Kamen Rider and stuff like that. So to start with the premise. So the story of how Godzilla was made, and credit to Big Action Bill on YouTube, because I was listening to his video earlier this week, and he was talking about it as well. But I basically just went onto the wiki to clarify some facts for myself beforehand for this recording. But there was a Japanese film company with producer at the head, Tomoyuki Tanaka, and he was supposed to do a movie that was a Japanese Indonesian culture movie about a Japanese soldier who falls in love with a half Indonesian woman. And I forget what the name of the movie was. It was like The Blades of something. And basically the politics between Indonesia and Japan were kind of falling apart at that point. This was in like the 40s. No, it was in the 50s. It was set to start production in the 50s, but probably the idea for it came in the late 40s. But Tomoyuki Tanaka's producers from the Japanese company, when they started to try to do filming, Indonesia wouldn't let them into the country to do the filming. So it was basically a scratched idea. So Tomoyuki Tanaka was flying back on an airplane. This is how the story goes. And he was thinking about how he could like make this into a movie. You know, this is post World War II era. That's important. And he thought about movies like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and The Monster from 20,000 Fathoms, which is a 1930s movie with a claymation monster that like walks around. It's like a I would say like 5-story tall like serpent with arms that like walks around and eats people and stuff. And then King Kong, which had recently re-released internationally, so he was able to see it. King Kong was such an important movie in terms of physical effects in movies, because nothing like it to that extent had ever been done with stop motion, and like the models they used for the cities and the planes, like it was all like new ground. So he thought he could make a movie called The Monster from 20,000 Miles Under the Sea, which would eventually become known as Gojira. And basically the movie was made as a response to nuclear kind of war, and a specific incident in Japanese history with the Lucky Dragon 5, which was a ship with Japanese sailors on it, which was near Bikini Atoll when they were testing the atomic bombs after dropping them on Nagasaki. And so all the people on that boat saw like this bright light in the ocean and didn't know what it was, and they all got radiation sickness. They all got acute radiation I guess symptoms. They all survived except for one guy, but it was like a huge thing in Japan because it like really, aside from obviously the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, it was a reminder that nuclear weapons were like so dangerous. So that was kind of the inspiration to make the movie on one end, like a very political kind of minded movie. And the first Godzilla movie is actually really dark. It's really good too. It's like there's no like, it's not cheap looking at all. It's very visually
Stunning.
And emotionally appealing.
Okay.
I wouldn't say stunning. It's just like you watch it and you're like, wow, they really got away with a lot here. Like there's a scene where this woman is cradling her children, telling them that they're going to be with their father soon, and then Godzilla's foot steps on all three of them. And that scene was actually removed when they re-released the movie in America, and they spliced in footage of Ray Byrne, who was a popular American actor at the time. So they spliced in footage of him like with a translator saying like, what are they talking about over here? And he would like narrate it. It's not the best version of the movie. The best version of the movie is the 1954 one.
Right.
So the movie goes, nuclear weapons, create this monster, and he comes and attacks Tokyo, and they don't know what it is. And the only person who can stop it is a guy named Dr. Serizawa, who's in kind of this love triangle with this person he's in an arranged marriage with, or who's supposed to be married to in an arranged marriage, and the love of her life, who happens to know him. And it's this kind of like thing where he knows he doesn't want to be with her, like, because he knows that she wants to be with him, but because of the Japanese culture. He has to go with her. Anyway, he's the only scientist who can develop a thing to defeat Godzilla, the oxygen destroyer, which by the end of the movie, Godzilla's come to shore, I think, twice, destroyed countless buildings, everything's on fire, people are dead, and they just hire him to go out with a sub, and he goes out into the water with the oxygen destroyer and his submarine suit, and he goes down with the boyfriend of his arranged wife because he wants to help. And he drops the oxygen destroyer near Godzilla when they find him with radar. And basically how the oxygen destroyer works is it takes all the oxygen out of the water, so it would kill anything that thrives on water, whether it breathes through its lungs or through gills.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's a post-war era and he knows how much damage can be done with technology when it's not reined in, Dr. Serizawa decides to cut his rope and die with the oxygen destroyer and Godzilla so that nobody can replicate his technology and use it in war. And that's how the movie ends. And then we go on to
present
the next
day
movies where it's a sequel and they bring like King Kong into it, which is the first Versus movie where like it's in the title. The first Versus movie actually is Godzilla Raids Again, which was a rushed sequel in 1955, but that one was kind of iffy because they accidentally sped up footage and they were supposed to slow it down to make the monsters look slow and like lumbering, but they actually just made it really fast, so it looks kind of awkward.
They're sprinting across the cities.
Yeah, pretty much. Like they walk normal, but when they fight, like when they're grappling each other, usually you want to slow it down because these are guys in rubber suits, and these suits can weigh up to 200 pounds. So these guys are moving slow already. But when you speed it up instead of slowing it down, it just makes them look like they're like
flailing
really fast. Yeah, and it takes the size out of it. But then King Kong vs. Godzilla comes out. They realize that the versus strategy of having him fight other monsters is the go-to. We get movies like Mothra and Rodan, then Godzilla vs. Mothra. This is all in the Showa era. There's three eras of Godzilla. The Showa era, which is like the original to like 75 with Terror of Mechagodzilla, and then Heisei era, which is like the 90s, which started with Godzilla 1984. And then goes until like 1999 with Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And then there's the Millennium Era, which is the Godzilla 2000 up to Godzilla Final Wars, which is from like 1999 to like 2004. And then we have like a 10-year break, and then we have the Legendary Godzillas, which is 2014 Godzilla King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, Skull Island, and then we also have the Japanese side, which is Shin Godzilla, which came out in 2016, and now the newly announced Godzilla -1, which is set to come out this year in Japan.
Yes,
which is a prequel to that.
Mm-hmm.
Super excited for that, by the way. Love the design.
Question, Tom.
Yeah.
In terms of overarching continuity, obviously, like the new American films are their own thing. Like they're kind of like kind of independent of like the mainline Japanese ones. But how much continuity is preserved in terms of like the timeline? Because I do notice when I see clips and when I see bits and pieces from more recent ones, it does seem like it's like, oh, we've had a couple of these scrapes before. Like when Godzilla's fighting someone, it's like, we've been here before. We know what to do. We have like a specific military outlet to deal with this. Like we have infrastructure in place to repel monster fights.
So that's an interesting point. Because most of the movies after the 90s kind of, well, first of all, the Showa era, from what I understand, is all continuous. Like it just goes from 1954, everything, 1970 to 1975's Terror of Mechagodzilla is all canon for them. So I don't know. It doesn't always occur in time of the movies. Like Destroy All Monsters, which came out in 1964, is set in like 2100, so it's all future-y. But all of those events happen in every movie. Like in Destroy All Monsters in the future, Godzilla's already fought King Ghidorah before, he's fought Mechagodzilla before, etc. It gets a little shaky when it comes to the Heisei era in the 90s, because a lot of these, when they have a new era, they like to just forego all of the 70s stuff and the 60s stuff because it was very silly. So like in Godzilla versus Biollante, which is the first of the Heisei era, they kind of just say, oh, Godzilla appeared in 1954 and now he's back. So they just say the original movie and then it just goes to that one. And then the Heisei era is similar to the Showa era, where it's like, oh yeah, he fought Biollante. Biollante gets killed, and that's what causes Space Godzilla to be born. And then he fights Space Godzilla, and then Ghidorah shows up, and blah blah blah.
So it's just
The
the
Millennium Era
butterfly
movies,
effect, like the
yeah,
series.
it's like a branching evolution.
Yeah,
but
like any great
Millennium
classic
Era
Hollywood
doesn't do
thing.
that. The Millennium Era doesn't do that, with the exception of the Kiryu saga, which is like 3 movies where Godzilla fights off against Mechagodzilla 3, and they're all kind of like in the same universe. Most of the time, they're like, oh, this is the, like, in Godzilla Giant Monsters All Out Attack, he's like this vengeful spirit, and it's said that he didn't come back. He hasn't come back since 1954, when in reality, in the Millennium Era, there had already been like 4 movies at that point. They just aren't, they don't continue like that. Same goes with Shin Godzilla. Actually, Shin Godzilla doesn't even use the first one as a base. Shin Godzilla is like the new origin. So in that movie, they have no idea what he is. And then, yeah, so it gets a little, as it gets further on in the timeline, they try and like erase all the stuff from the 60s because it was very goofy and like kid-oriented for a while there. So.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Out of those eras, which is the one you like the most, given that you've had a pretty good experience with most of them?
Yeah.
My favorite movies, my 2 favorite Godzilla movies, aside from Godzilla King of the Monsters from 2019, which is the legendary one, are
really
Godzilla Final Wars from 2004 and Godzilla Giant Monsters All Out Attack from 2001. Those are both in the Millennium series. That being said, the rest of the movies in the Millennium series are okay for me. I like them. But I think I prefer the Heisei Godzilla over the others in terms of design. Because he looks cooler. And he's also the tallest, with the exception of the legendary Godzilla. So the OG Godzilla was like 50 meters when he first showed up, and then they leveled him off at like 75 meters by the time 975 hit. The Heisei Godzilla is like 100 meters. So he's like almost
That's a football field.
Yeah. He's like big. And
I like that. Bigger. I like that's their version of like, well, how do we top Thanos? Like, because that's the problem when you have like a long-running franchise. It's like, well, how do you raise the stakes? Like, we already had Thanos snap everyone out of existence, so I guess we have to do the entire universes are caving in, and their version of that is, what if he's bigger?
Make him bigger. Yeah. That was actually what the production studios, the studios that were producing these movies wanted from the director, was like, just make him bigger because it's bigger is better. And that was the idea in the 90s. But then in the 2000s, they shrunk him down again.
Because everything wanted to be smaller.
Like 75. And then Legendary came out, and Legendary's like, he's the biggest. But he's not now because Shin Godzilla's the biggest. But then Legendary was like, well, wait. Now he's bigger because he got juiced in King of the Monsters, and he's technically taller. And
he got yoked. Yeah,
he's more mass, but like Shin Godzilla's taller with his tail up. And it's like, but then there's Godzilla Earth from the anime, who's like a mountain, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, I would say overall Heisei is my favorite.
Right.
Heisei Godzilla.
Yeah.
And Final Wars takes the design from Heisei, which is why I like it.
Now, here's a question, Tom. When you're watching a Godzilla movie, are you looking more for like quality plot line?
No.
Or are you looking for big monster fights?
No. I'm looking for big monster fights.
Let's go.
Like, Final Wars and GMK. Like, GMK actually has Giant Monsters All Out Attack from 2001. Actually has a really good story. I really like that one for the story because they tie all the monsters in realistically. It's like, oh, these are ancient monsters. They were protecting of Earth. And it's still like a dumbass anime plotline, but it's better than most of the other movies where it's like, they came from space. Or they want to take over Japan or whatever. It's like more convoluted than that. It's like the GMK Godzilla is all the souls of the people who died in the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombings who have inhabited Godzilla
they
because
just spell it out.
Yeah, because they're mad that Japan has forgot about the nuclear disaster because in that universe they're looking at nuclear power as like a way to the future. So that's more of akin to the original Godzilla movie. But like Final Wars, it's like the aliens come, they use a mind control device to turn all the monsters onto their side, and then they have a big soccer match with Godzilla and Anguirus the ball. So like, I'm not looking for like plot,
Right.
And that was one of my problems with 2014 when I first saw it, was that it was so much plot, and it wasn't like a plot that I was really super invested in. So I was like,
That's
where's
fair.
the good monster? If it's not going to be like groundbreaking, just shut up and let me see Godzilla.
Right. Because like the problem with that one really is like I get the principle of being like, hey, the first Godzilla is like this really like thoughtful, methodical, thematic piece. Like it has a plot, it has character, it has like, big ideas. And that's fine. But the ideas they chose were just like the most basic, like, I have to get back to my family. And like,
exactly.
like the interesting theme stuff of like, like the idea of like, oh, these monsters are forces of nature. We have to let them fight to like balance the ecosystem. That stuff kind of gets shoved to the sidelines, and we don't really get, and that's more just table setting for the actual monster fight that takes way too long to get here. While they still keep cutting away to the damn soldier characters who we already have established we don't care about. Like, they're not interesting.
Yeah, they're expendable. They're literally just in the movie to get killed by the Mutos, to show the Mutos are a threat. Even though the Mutos are shown to be a threat, but one of them literally tramples Vegas.
Yeah,
so
it's
there's
like,
no point.
You know how you make a big monster a threat? Have him break stuff we like and be like, oh no, I like that thing.
No, I liked Vegas. They had great buffets.
Actually, show it to us where we can see it, because that was another problem with 2014.
Yes, I can agree to that.
The lighting was so bad.
It was not
like they wanted to make it so dark and gritty.
I respect
the guy who directed that.
All right.
The guy who directed that movie was famous for another movie called Monsters, which was much more of that style.
Fucking blows. I'm sorry.
That's what I've heard. Everyone, when I first saw the movie, was like, "No, it's just his style." And then I looked at like Monsters. I never watched it, but people were talking about it online. And I was like, "Yeah, this is kind of like it's like all suspense and no actual monster. It's like this very like theoretical idea kind of thing."
As a filmmaker, I had that film shoved down my throat at the moment, and I'm like, guys, stop trying to feed me diarrhea. This isn't good. This isn't good. I know we want to see this guy succeed, but it's not good. Please stop.
I can respect like a good thriller movie with like you don't want to reveal the monster till the right time. Like look at Jurassic Park, for example. They don't show the full T-Rex until like significantly into the movie.
That's true.
And outside of that, he was more of just like an entity roaming around. And I can respect that. However, it has to be done well, and I don't think you could do that for like just a normal Godzilla movie.
Well, that's the thing. That's what they did in the original movie. And in my mind, when the original movie exists, you should not be trying to make a more powerful movie than that, because you're really probably not going to. Because that movie was made after a nuclear bomb went off.
Yeah.
And was showing people dying from radiation in the movie, people being trampled to death. And like it was just brutal to watch. It's a masterpiece in my opinion, but it's brutal. So like at that point, there's really nothing like you can do to make it more impactful than that. So why are we trying to make it all serious? Plus, like you were saying, like revealing the monster, they reveal Godzilla in that movie really early, actually. Problem is, they reveal him for like one shot where he roars, and then for a whole other 45 minutes, it's just cutaways and whatever. So we already know what he looks like. If we're not gonna, if you're gonna do that wait to show him thing, you should do it how the original Godzilla did it, where they show little bits and pieces, like his tail or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the big reveal. He comes on the shore, he wreaks havoc, and then he comes onto shore again later in the movie for the final bout.
Right.
That's what they could have done. They could have made the whole fight with the boy Muto, where he's fighting him at the airport, and like they cut away from it in Hawaii. They should have just made that the first fight, skip the rest of the stuff where, he's like being cut away from when he's fighting the Muto, and then it only shows up in the final fight. They should have just went that fight and the final fight. And then that would make it more impactful. Because we already know what he looks like. We just want to see him.
I remember in the theater being so angry when we finally see Godzilla, and then it cuts away, and we just see a clip of it on TV. I remember being like, if I wasn't on a date right now, I would scream at
I watched that movie with my mom, and we were both mad.
Oh, no, Tom.
My mom was the one who got me into Godzilla, because she bought me a video game that I wanted War of the Monsters for PS2, and
Great game.
Saw Godzilla destroy all monsters, and she and my dad grew up on Godzilla. She's like, he'll probably like this. So she got me to destroy all monsters. I got hooked. And we were both in the theater. I'm like, they had him right there. And I was like, however old I was, probably like, 18 maybe at the time, 17. She's like, yeah, I know, it's annoying.
Shout out to Mom Tom.
Shout out to Mom Tom.
The one good thing, I'll give the 2014 Godzilla one piece of credit in terms of Godzilla stuff. Because, like,
Okay.
I assumed, because that whole era was, like, the dark and gritty, more grounded approach. That was, like, Amazing Spider-Man before they retconned it. That was TMNT before they retconned it to be more colorful. And so I'm like, oh, well, he's probably just going to be a giant lizard breaking things. They're not going to do any crazy Godzilla powers. And then, like, he's
Oh,
on the
yeah.
ground, and, like, all hope is lost. And suddenly the screen starts glowing, and you just see all of his spikes. I'm like, hell yeah, that's how you do a reveal. That he can
I
shoot
tell you,
fire.
when I saw that in the theater, I was
You
jumping
cried.
out of my seat.
Oh, let's go.
I almost did.
I was hooting and hollering, and I'm not as big on Godzilla.
I watched that, and it's still not my favorite Godzilla movie, but when I see that scene where the blue starts going up the tail, I just get giddy. Like, it's just everything I've ever... Because for the longest time, like, anything Godzilla, they would try and shy away from that. Like, even the movies where he had the beams, and, like, Godzilla 2000, they made it red, so they want to look more like fire. The dreaded Godzilla American version in 1998 didn't even have him blow any fire. He was just a big iguana. So it's like, there's no way that there's going to be another American Godzilla movie and they're not going to give him the breath. And albeit the breath didn't look as good as I wanted it to, because it was like flimsy almost. It looked like air as opposed to like a concentrated beam, which gets fixed in King of the Monsters when they juice him. But
well, like,
I still, when that shows up, I'm just like, oh, like, so good. Like, that's what I want.
That's why I like King of the Monsters, because it's everything that works on paper with 2014, but, like, not apologetic about it. Like, the first film, like, 2014 almost feels like, yeah, we're sorry we're making you watch a Godzilla movie, but we're trying to do something here, and it's... Whereas Godzilla, like, King of the Monsters, it's like, okay, one, the characters are more interesting. They do more interest... Like, the idea that there's, like, a faction of bioterrorists who are like, no, we need to let these monsters rampage. It's going to clean the deck. We'll start from scratch. I'm like, okay, that's a cool concept for a monster movie. If nothing else, that's interesting. I want to see how they grow from that.
They are bad. It's, like, clear. It's like, these people are bad, and I'm not sure if I hate them yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're interesting. But also, like, it still has a lot of, like, the thematic elements of these creatures representing mankind's arrogance with the climate, mankind's arrogance with, like, trying to conquer the land. But at the same time, it's like, this is a GD monster movie. Let's have colorful monsters shooting lightning beams at each other. Like Rodan's wings are literally on fire the entire time.
Oh my God, talk about that's such a reference. Like, I love that, because Rodan in the 90s get a rebranding to Fire Rodan. So he was originally... Rodans are born in volcanoes, which is why he came out of the volcano in that movie. But they rebranded him to Fire Rodan in the 90s with Godzilla vs. Godzilla 2. And I'm so glad that they didn't just focus on the old school, like really old school references in that movie, that they took stuff from the 90s, from the 2000s. Like, everything was represented. They even played Rodan's theme when he came out of the lava. Oh, perfect. That's another thing, like you were saying about, like, it almost reminds me of a conversation I heard on the Disney Desk. Be sure to listen to that.
The Disney Desk starting our own Carter?
There you go. That's him. It was a thing Carter was talking about when he was talking about how they handled the Owl House, and how the execs that, like, were doing it were like, oh, I don't want to handle the gay show. It's kind of like that, but it's like, I don't want to handle... For 2014, it's like, I don't want to handle the big, dumb monster movie. I want to make something artistic. And they're like, yeah, we know it's Godzilla, but look at these important people. And it's like, no, if you're going to do a Godzilla movie, that's why I'm so glad when they announced the director for the second one that he was a huge nerd. And I remember a really weird occurrence where I was watching an interview before that movie came out, and Cuba Gooding Jr., or not Cuba Gooding Jr., excuse me. Oh gosh, what is his name? Ice Cube's son. No, Ice Cube's son. He stars in it. I can't remember what his full name is, but they were doing an interview with him on one of the talk shows. And they're like, are you excited for this movie? And he's like, yeah, I used to watch all the movies when I was a kid. And it's like, so... And the guy was like, so are you excited when King... And he said Ghidorah wrong. He said, like, Ghidra or some... He's pronounced it way wrong. And he's like, it's going to shoot his lightning at you? And he goes, they're gravity beams. And I literally was like, this is going to be a great movie. Like, the people actually know the names of the attacks.
Right. It's like when Sam Raimi gets announced to direct, like, the first Spider-Man film, where you're like, don't worry, the nerds are in charge. Everything's going to be okay. Like,
exactly.
The homework's going to be done.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. And, yeah, it is, like, you would be shocked how often, like, when people are like, oh, why does Sonic look like that? Or why did this happen? Why did this happen? And it's like, almost so many times it is some like executive or some like producer has been tasked with overseeing an IP, because like all these studios are very precious about their IP, and they're just like, I have to do the fucking Hedgehog movie.
Exactly.
And then it's like, well, make him look like a sprinter. That'll be kind of cool. And like, it just leads them down a garden path of bad decisions. And then you end up having to spend delaying a movie an entire calendar year to fix Sonic.
Yeah. Which my conspiracy theory is that they always planned that, and that they did that to garner more people to see it. Like, they knew they were going to change the design, but that's just my conspiracy theory.
I don't know. That long game would be insane considering how much merch they already made.
That's true.
I'd love a good long game, though.
It's funny that your mom introduced you to Godzilla, because my dad inadvertently did that with King Kong. I don't think he was doing it as much on purpose, but it was like me and Ben. God, how old would we have been when Peter Jackson's King Kong came out?
Oh, we were like...
It came out in 2005.
Oh,
yeah, we were like 8.
8th grade.
Yeah, we were like 8 or 9.
I was 8 when I found out about Godzilla, so
I was too young to see that movie in theaters.
The same coin card.
The King.
We're like brothers.
Yeah.
Only closer.
Yeah, I was.
Lift up my shirt. We're inexplicably attached.
For the Peter Jackson Godzilla or King Kong, I remember my dad. He was just like, "Hey, you want to go see this King Kong movie?" And it was like PG-13, and I'm like, yeah." I was like super on board with seeing a movie that technically I couldn't see yet. And then my dad's like, "Yeah, I saw it like earlier this week too, just to make sure it wasn't too insane for you." But you watched
a 3-hour movie.
Yeah.
You saw it twice?
Yeah, no, he did.
He must have liked it. Also,
he did.
Real talk, that movie traumatized me when I first saw it. Cause
yeah.
I don't know. I'm afraid of worms and slugs, and that scene where they're in the depths and those big worms come out and eat them. Oh my god. Ugh.
Yeah, like, God. Well, see.
Wait, did that?
I can't even watch a monster movie sometimes.
Did that develop?
Big worm.
Did that develop your fear of worms, or was it all right?
My fear of worms goes back to when I was like 4. I don't remember if there was a specific instance. I think I just always found them gross. And I specifically remember one time I was at my cousin's house in Poconos, and it was when those moths were like breeding, and there were all the caterpillars all over the ground, and one of them was crawling up my leg. I was probably like 6, and I just had like a panic attack. I just can't handle it. But yeah, that scene was, oh god.
But yeah,
I don't even remember any of the movie. I just remember that part, which is bad.
Yeah, which is
I mean, Jack Black's in it, so you know it's a good movie.
True.
That entire sequence is a reference to a lot of stuff that was like designed for King Kong but didn't come in. Like it's such a weird movie that I love to death because it's simultaneously too long. Like at its current length, it's too short, but it's also too long. Because it's like, you can tell this thing was like 4.5 hours, and they're like, we gotta cut so much of this out. Like, there was the whole subplot where, like, the little, like, ship hand might have been on Skull Island at one point, or, like, he's really freaked out about it. There's an entire sequence where they're going through a swamp and getting terrorized by, like, a water creature that was finished. That's a finished scene. That's not previs. That's not, like, storyboards. They literally finished all of the CGI on that and then just didn't put it in the movie, which is insane. You just would not do that now because that's like so much work.
Yeah.
Like especially there is so much. Oh yeah, and this is like back when there weren't as many CGI studios.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that movie's so interesting because it is like, I think it captured. Well, one, it's like you can tell Peter Jackson really fucking loves that original movie because so much of it is like, hey, let's create something that's just like the original movie. And weirdly, what got me really into it was the video game that came out that had this whole.
I played that game.
Yes, the whole mechanic was like, okay, if any of these monsters get too close to you, you're dead as disco. So you have to like use strategy. You got to like lure them away with food, or you got to find things that'll set them on fire, or you got to pit certain animals against certain animals, and then you just have the
Pokemon.
Basically, yes.
Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I really love that movie, and that's what got me into it. Now, anything modern King Kong comes out, I try to see it. And King Kong is, like, the best example. Like, it's so interesting because, again, it plays in a lot of weird thematic areas. It plays in a lot of, like, messy ideas. Maybe not as much as... It is funny, the origin is so much, like, dumber. I don't want to say dumber, but just more, like, wacky than, like, someone grappling with Japan's aftermath of a nuclear disaster.
Well, I mean, it's more. Actually, it's probably more plausible in real life that there will be a giant monkey or he's an ape, a giant ape on a deserted island in the middle of
right.
where is it,
like the
off the coast of
Pacific.
Indonesia or
Yeah,
something?
the South
Then
Pacific
there
is.
would be to be like a new took a lizard and made him into a giant monster. They don't even say that in the original movie. They don't say that he was like a lizard or whatever to begin with. He just shows up, and they say it's to cause a nuclear, whatever. But
Fallout.
Right. Yeah, the original brain guy behind King Kong was Marion C. Cooper. He was like he was a decorated World War I veteran. He was in a prison camp for a while. He was like a crazy guy. But like his actual career ended up being he would like film pseudo documentaries. At the time they were called nature dramas. The idea is like they would basically just shoot a documentary.
Nature drama.
Go around an exotic location, like actually be near a tiger and stuff. Stuff that you just like film insurance companies simply wouldn't greenlight anymore. Like it's insane. We used to shoot with like real tigers and lions, and like there was a
and monkeys,
and someone would get mauled on set. And apparently, he literally just saw a Komodo dragon and was like, "What if I do a film where I have an ape fight a Komodo dragon?" And then somehow that just loses the Komodo dragon, and it's like, "I'm going to focus in on the monkey." And then there's like a bunch of different drafts. Originally, it was going to be a bunch of ex-convicts roll up on like a big game hunter. Gets stranded on this desert island where a bunch of like ex-cons tried to escape to, and it's got all these monsters and stuff. Like weirdly, it was just a huge period for monkey movies in Hollywood. Particularly, there was this movie in Gagi, which was this like exploitation film with like lots of boobies and nudity and stuff. They actually reference that in the Peter Jackson movie because like when Jack Black's like pitching like I'm gonna go to this island never before charted by man. There's going to be so many wonders. And the producer just pauses and goes, "What about the bazonkas?" And Jack Black's like, "What? This is about the art. This is about like history." And he just keeps talking about like, well, we're not going to be able to sell it if we don't have nudity. This is pre-code Hollywood, so you're allowed to like kind of just get away with anything. It's the Wild West, where it's like if you can film it, you're allowed to put it in a theater.
Well, that's the interesting part. Is not to cut you off, but just really quickly. The special effects guy on that movie, on the original King Kong, not the 2005, the original, was a huge inspiration for Age of Tsuburaya, who is the mastermind behind all the Godzilla practical effects from like the original movie. And back when you were talking about the
bazongas,
you like wanted to make not the bazongas, because we were talking about King Kong fighting a giant lizard. First of all, it's funny that I'm Team Godzilla since I am going for primatology as my career. I love monkeys, apes, all the things that have to do with oohs and ahs, but I still love the giant dinosaur more. But two, the Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. King Kong, when adjusted for inflation, I think Shin Godzilla just beat it out recently for the highest grossing ticket sales for any Japanese Godzilla movie, was Godzilla vs. King Kong. And that was in 1962, first movie with verses in the title. And it partially why it was so popular was because there was a theory that depending on what country you saw it in, the movie ended in a different way, with either Godzilla winning or King Kong winning.
Oh, that's cool.
And I think it isn't true. I wish it was.
They did the whole Clue thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But just Carter saying that actually reminded me of that fact, and it's kind of a spiritual successor to the idea of a giant monkey or a giant ape, I guess, fighting a big lizard.
Right. It's so like I don't know. It's such a weird science figuring out like these monster movies because, like, especially because so much of the Peter Jackson's King Kong is like these little vignettes where we're just like, oh, we are in a new location. What horrible thing is waiting to eat half our crew now? And it really is like. And that's what, like, because when Kong Skull Island first came out, I was all ready to not like it. Like, I was so like, man, now Peter Jackson's one isn't going to be canon. They're going to, like, erase all the iconography. Like, you'll go to Universal Studios and it'll be all this movie and not Peter Jackson's King Kong. And then I watched it. And one, it's really funny they put in the 1970s because there's a whole drama around making a remake of King Kong in the 1970s that I believe I've talked to you guys about. That is the whole story about the studio just suing anyone who's doing anything vaguely similar to King Kong.
Oh,
and
yeah.
King Kong almost killed
yeah.
Nintendo. But anyway, like, and you watch that movie, and it's like, again, it's very similar. Where it's like, you set up a premise, you have like a huge cast of like semi-disposable human characters, and you kind of just like throw them into the chaos. And it's so weird. Like, it's like I said, it's such a tough balancing act to make that work, because it's like finding just the right amount of human drama where you stay invested, where you're like, well, what do I care, like, if they survive or not? I've already seen like 7 set pieces where half the crew gets eaten apart.
Yeah.
Like, you need to find that right balance of being invested. On top of that,
I wonder if
Okay.
semi-disposable was written on the casting sheet when
Yeah.
they went for the role.
Oh, man.
Oh, absolutely.
You're
it
the
was.
semi-disposable survivor of Skull Island.
Oh, man.
I mean, they're actors in Hollywood. They're all semi-disposable.
Oof.
Yeah, support labor, everyone. Well, it's also the challenge of like, so much of it gets carried by whether or not they do a good job personifying the animals. Like for example, that's like the best. Like, Rodan is my favorite character in King the Monster, because you just feel the like sniveling worm energy off of him, for lack of a
Oh
better
my god, yeah.
where he sounds
Such
like
a-
he's constantly going.
He's such a
Yeah,
star.
He-Man.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah,
and no better
He's
moments.
the Skeletor, he's the Starscream, he's the sniffling little wretch
Squirt.
that will get on whatever side's winning. Which is
Exactly.
not incoherent with the other movies he's been in the 70s.
Right, and it's especially because it's like at the very end of the movie, he Godzilla ready, and for a minute you're like, is he gonna try to throw down? Is Godzilla gonna have to kill Rodan in this movie? And then Godzilla just gives him one look, like, son, just don't. And Rodan then just like bends the knee, and you're like, what a absolute
Coward.
like twerp till the
I mean,
bitter end.
Let's be honest. If he gets killed by Mothra, like, Godzilla's gonna wreck him.
I mean,
like,
not
Yeah,
wrong.
true.
I mean, he didn't get killed by Mothra. He just got gravely wounded, and so that he couldn't fight anymore. But like, come on, dog.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
different
you gotta do a
level.
little more than that.
That's a death sentence.
In terms of like the monster characters, what is the one you follow the most? Because I know some have like movies outside of the Godzilla universe, like they get their own movies. Which one would you say you follow the most outside of King Kong or Godzilla?
Well, it's unique that you asked that because there is a plethora of movies about Mothra. So there's a Mothra movie series called The Rebirth of Mothra, which is a 3-series thing where it fights like different variants of Godzilla monsters. So it fights something called Desghidorah, which is like a black King Ghidorah with like more Western dragon features that shoots red beam. And then he goes in the third one. He's like in the future, and it's a he now. It's a boy Mothra instead of girl Mothra, and he's like mechanical. I haven't seen those ones. I've seen the original Mothra movie that came out in, I believe, 1961, or no, it was earlier than that. It was like 1958. And then I've seen the original Rodan, which also came out in 1958, I believe. Both produced by Toho. And this was before they were shown in any Godzilla movie at that point.
Oh, that's interesting.
The original Rodan movie is actually really good.
I'm curious
really
what that would be.
interesting. The suit is so interesting because they create all these effects with these models because Rodan's powers include like supersonic speed, where he's just him flying over a city can destroy it. So like they have a full suit with like movable wings and stuff, and they have the wind like destroying these models and sending stuff flying. It's really interesting. And there's actually 2 Rodans in it because they're siblings, and there's this drama between them because like one of them is dying, and it's really like emotional at the end, weirdly, for like a 1958 monster movie. But yeah, aside from King Kong, Mothra, and Rodan, there's really not too many offshoots. There are other series which use Godzilla monster suits. So stuff like Kamen Rider, or what is it called? I think Super Sentai even use some, where they'll take old suits from Godzilla movies and modify them a little bit and be like, oh, this is a new monster,
Right.
I think they did that for Power Rangers too at one point.
Let's go Power Rangers, probably.
Yeah, probably. So when Godzilla movies finish shooting, they often keep around the suit from the last movie. This was especially true in the 70s. But it was even used as a tactic in like the Millennium series, where they would keep the suit from that movie and then keep it for shots where he's in the water and where he's like having like fake explosions on him, so that it would only damage the suit from the old movie. So they keep the new movie suit for like the action shots, or like the shots where he's like close up and you can really see the details. So, yeah, I would say Rodan is probably my favorite monster that started separately from Godzilla. Just because he's cool, but
yeah.
All right, so what were you gonna say, Carter? You go first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if I could pick one, I really do want to get, because Mothra's cool. Like, even though I'm traumatized by butterflies and moths since that one SpongeBob episode, like, I'm like, it's just a giant moth. That's awesome. With the big silly eyes.
Very fuzzy. It was huge in the original Godzilla vs. Mothra movie. Mothra is gigantic. Like the suit they used for her is huge. Like her body, like not wings included, is like almost as big as the Godzilla suit. And then you have the wings on top of that. It was a huge suit. It required a lot of wiring tricks in order to get it to work.
Sure.
But pretty cool stuff.
So, would that be a safe bet to guess that if you had to pick any monster to have like a modern day, like more solo movie, you would pick Mothra? Or would you pick someone else? Ooh.
I would not pick Mothra.
All right, so let's say Godzilla vs. Kong 2, guest starring which monster would you want to be that
Gigan. Gigan is, for those who don't know, Gigan is a cyborg monster, often lumped in with King Ghidorah because in the old continuity from the same planet. He's got a bird beak, one eye, a saw blade on his chest, and size for weapons. Now in the newest movie, the newest iteration of him in an official Toho production was 2004 Final Wars, where he was sleeker and he was black in color, and he had chainsaws.
There it is.
Dual-wielding chainsaws instead of size.
My man.
But since that episode of Castpod where we talked about this, there was another short film that was released called Gigan Attacks, where it was a Godzilla that's sort of similar to what Godzilla -1's design is, mixed with, I would say, the Millennium Godzilla and Legendary Godzilla equally, where he goes into a city and fights an army of Gigan. And then the big...
But what are their hands?
It looks more similar to the Gigan from the old days, where he's like almost like teardrop shaped. Like he's not sleek, he's still like bulbous, but he's like a robot. He's like fully mechanical. Automated. And then the final one is a red Gigan. And the red Gigan has like size that can go like really far and like hook, and it's really cool. And I think Gigan is also considered to be Mothra's rival. I mean, the Godzilla
love rival for Godzilla.
Series. Not a love rival, just like they were in a lot of movies. They say Mothra and Gigan were like the two monsters that had an ancient rivalry. So in a lot of movies where Godzilla is fighting Gigan, Mothra will be a part of it. Like Mothra was part of 2004's Final Wars and personally took out Gigan so that he wouldn't gang up on Godzilla when Godzilla was fighting somebody else. So I think seeing as Mothra will almost certainly make a return, because Mothra is one of those characters that always lays an egg before she dies, and the Mothra twins are referencing Godzilla King of the Monsters, so it's assumed that they're still alive in the Godzilla vs. Kong, and then the sequel. So theoretically, and Mothra is always designed to defend Earth. So if there was another enemy, I feel like they could wrap it up easily with Mothra coming in to fight Gigan or to help fight Gigan. But I think it would be a cool contrast.
What about Minecraft? What?
I said it was a cool contrast.
Oh, I heard
I just appreciate
Minecraft.
that there's one dedicated to... Well, they'll add Godzilla skins at some point. There's Godzilla skins and Fall Guys, for God's sakes. I just appreciate that there's one of these big monsters that's almost always the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like Godzilla's like neutral for the most part. Like it's like what the situation demands. You know, I guess King Kong kind of fought. Like I guess he leans. Well, he kind of just wants.
I feel like he's more territorial. Yeah. I would say he's good
he
neutral.
Only causes problems when people show up at his house. Whereas like, you know, Ghidorah leans evil, and
Ghidorah's fully evil. Well, Ghidorah was good once. Was good exactly once.
Really? When was that?
Godzilla Giant Monsters All Attack, where he was the final guardian to stop Godzilla, who was the souls of the people who were forgotten about after they got bombed. So Godzilla was the bad guy in that one, which is why I like it. The three monsters that try to stop Godzilla in that movie are Baragon, who is a reference to Frankenstein versus Baragon, where this old movie where also produced by Toho, where a giant Frankenstein or a kid gets like infected and he turns into this giant Frankenstein monster, and then Baragon is like this. I don't know what you would call him. I guess he's like a vole mixed with
a cutie patootie.
Aaron's input is that he's a cutie patootie. Baragon is one of Aaron's favorites. But he's got a little horn on his nose. He's got these like bat ears. So they brought him back he was also in a cameo in Destroy All Monsters in 1964, but he didn't do anything. So they brought him back as one guardian. Then it's obviously Mothra as the other guardian, and then King Ghidorah, who is not considered King Ghidorah until the end of the movie when he awakens to his true state. Because in that movie, he's like awakened early because he's supposed to be like a 10,000-year dragon, but it's only been 2,000 years since he was awakened. So he's supposed to have 8 heads in that movie. He only has 3. So they weren't going to make 8 heads. And then he's like, he can't fly and stuff. And then Mothra gets cooked. And then Mothra's soul goes into Ghidorah and makes him King Ghidorah. He can fly, he can use electricity, and then Godzilla bodies him anyway. So that was the only time Ghidorah was good, unless you count when in Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in the 90s, when they went into the future to get the aliens went into the future to get the mechanics needed to turn the body of King Ghidorah under the sea after Godzilla destroyed him and give him a robotic head that they controlled so that he can fight Godzilla. But that's not really him. That's just...
that's just...
Heck, I mean, even in the newest, in Godzilla vs. Kong, the reason that Mechagodzilla goes crazy is because King Ghidorah's skull is so inherently evil that its consciousness of wanting to kill everything makes it go crazy.
It's classic Shakespearean, like, classic storytelling. Man versus man, man versus nature. Aliens travel through time for monster fights.
Yeah. Giant lizard versus Orochi.
All right. And one last question for you, Tom, before we start wrapping things up. If you had, and I probably asked this before of you, but oh well, I'll ask it again because I don't remember.
I love repeat questions, Kevin.
It's a habit of mine. If you had to create your own monster,
oh shit,
what would be the inspiration? Like you don't have to give specifics if you don't want to. / can't think of anything fast enough. But like, what would be your like inspiration? Like, I want it to be based off of this, and then what would its main power be? So Godzilla, for example, big old lizard that has like radiation blast or space blast, or there's like 900 powers that Godzilla has. And go.
I get you. Well, my first thought, I'm going to do 2 because one of them isn't a real monster that never got released, and the other one I'm going to think of off the top. So the one I think of that was never released is called Bagan, and he was actually supposed to be in... there was talks about him being in Giant Monsters All Attack at one point as one of the Guardians instead of King Ghidorah.
Nice.
But he was originally conceived as this kind of giant, like, lizard, kind of like Godzilla. But he more had like Destroya features. Destroya's like this devil crab monster. So it was kind of like
Boulder Snorf.
With red. Yeah, that's Boulder's Nerf. That's it. So Bagan was supposed to be one of those monsters that Godzilla fights that like Godzilla loses, right? Like Godzilla loses, and then like the humans take the monster out, or the son of Godzilla takes him out, or whatever. Kind of like
Godzilla goes on a training arc for a couple of years.
Exactly. So he was this kind of like bulky red Godzilla kind of look-alike, but he had like these fins on his ears, and he almost looked like, if any of the listeners who play Pokemon, he's kind of like a Mega Aggron. Like he's got like those sharp spines and spikes, and he's got this like kind of almost sinister demeanor. He doesn't have pupils. And he uses, I believe, plasma, or at least that's what they were supposed to use. But in the end, he only ended up ever being released in the end as one of the bosses in the end of Super Godzilla, and I think in a Super NES, Super Godzilla was Super NES game, which I played a lot of, but I never beat. I think he was also in the end of he was supposed to be a fight for Mothra in the Rebirth of Monster series, but that got switched out for, I think, Descador at the time. So yeah, I think him being in the series would be cool. He's a really cool design. Aside from that, I think something that could be really cool would be some form of. So there's one monster called Manda, who's like this big, long, like almost Chinese-looking dragon, like typical Chinese dragon. He's pretty cool. He's like a big snake. He gets killed in Godzilla Final Wars, and he shows up and he wraps his in Destroy All Monsters in the '60s. He like shows up and like wraps himself around a train, and then that's it. That's all he does.
That's the name.
And his suit is so long that he was on little wheels.
That's awesome.
In the old show, in the old movies. But what I think could be really cool was if we had a monster similar to Manda, but not as serpent-like. Almost have a kind of fusion between Godzilla and Manda, where it's like this dragon, like typical like Chinese dragon, like almost like Shenron. If you've watched like Dragon Ball Z, like he's got like that kind of look.
Okay.
But he's bipedal, right?
Yeah, like American Dragon Jake Long.
Like American Dragon Jake Long. Yeah. I'm realizing the similarities to that now. But have his body be plasma, so have him not be like a suit. You know what I mean? Like almost similar to, if anybody's listening or if you guys have seen the Godzilla anime that came out a few years ago. In that show, King Ghidorah was like this space monster, but he wasn't a monster. He was like sentient electricity. Yeah, so he was like an entity, right? Exactly. So have this kind of amorphous, almost like Chaos from Sonic kind of look, where he's like goopy and plasmy, and he doesn't have like definable features, but you can tell what he's supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like it if he had the same power that Megaguirus has. Megaguirus is this giant dragonfly that Godzilla fought in like 2003, where I don't think this was ever shown in the movie, but in promotional work and in the games that Megaguirus was a part of, Megaguirus could stab you with its stinger and then take your attack. So he could then shoot Godzilla's atomic breath out of his stinger, or Rodan's heat ray out of his stinger. And I think that could be cool to bring back. I think it would be cool for Godzilla or any other monster to fight something that's essentially gets stronger as you fight it, and doesn't have a physical form to fight. Kind of like a Majin Buu situation.
Just throwing out Dragon Ball references left and right.
That's the best way I could describe it, because I don't like. There's nothing really like that in like real.
That's a different video.
Cinema,
Tom.
because it's different. Yeah, that is different. That's a teaser for all you listeners. But yeah, so like an absorb and throw it back kind of character.
Okay, I like that. Kind of like
That,
Bishop from the
or
X-Men's powers.
Yeah, Bishop is a good example.
All right.
That or another big monkey.
Could be another big
monkey. I'm always looking for more monkeys.
Yeah, no. If I had to pick one, I would go for like I'm thinking like a and I'm just dancing back and forth here a little bit. What if we go for like an anteater? Like an anteater or a pangolin.
Like an anteater. Okay,
Oh,
that's pretty cool.
Doesn't have to be exactly one
feels
of
like
them.
it already tracks.
Yeah, I mean, you already got like Anguirus and Baragon. They're kind of similar to that. Like Anguirus is kind of like this Ankylosaurus mixed with like a hedgehog.
Ankylosauruses are cool.
He is cool. But like, yeah, you got that unlock. That is a fun fact I'll throw out here before the end. The suit actor for Anguirus in the old movies couldn't put his feet on all fours. So that's why in the old movies you'll sometimes see Anguirus dragging himself because the suit wasn't made for somebody to be able to
walk
put all 4 feet on the ground and like still walk. So the guy was like almost in like a yoga position when he was walking.
Hilarious.
But yeah, I think that's definitely feasible. What powers would he have?
I'd want something asinine.
What if he has like paralysis toxin on his tongue?
Well, that's just the Shearshrew from Avatar that Carter still needs to watch.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
I'm working on it.
I would say like, what would be a fun power for like an anteater? Like,
he could like suck blood through his tongue.
True. I don't know why, but I'm feeling mind control.
Like a mind control anteater.
Yeah, like you know how it's like the Shearshrew from Avatar, it hits you with its tongue and then you get paralyzed. It hits you with its tongue and then you fall under its mind control.
Okay, so are you thinking kind of like he just strikes you with it, or is he like Wonder Woman like lasso of truthing you, where like if he has it wrapped around you, then
just a strike.
Okay, yeah. I like that. Because that would make sense, because he's probably not too physically strong, but he could get others on his side.
Not super physically strong. He's not going to be the biggest monster out there. He's not going to be a football field tall. Maybe 30, 40 yards. Definitely field goal range, but not a full field.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, he makes up for his shortcomings by being able to mind control.
Nice.
And if it was a cartoon series, there would be at least at one point where people are cowering inside some sort of building from him, and his tongue would put on a fedora or something and knock on the door, and they'd be like, "Oh, so somebody's here."
A very intelligent monster.
I would say pretty intelligent. Definitely the upper end of the intelligence scale for made-up giant monsters.
You got to give him a name though.
And I already used Boulder Snorf.
Can't use Boulder Snorf. You got to come up with something else.
I got to come up with something else.
Don't worry, Carter. We're gonna get yours next.
I'm still brainstorming. You guys are saving me time. This is good.
Gorthalax the.
Gorthalax is a great name.
Gorthalax the. What's like another word for intelligent? Gorthalax the wise? No.
Gorthalax the. Sharp?
No. Or if I just go with Kaiser Gorthalax?
Kaiser Gorthalax, like Kaiser Ghidorah?
Yes.
That would be really funny, because Kaiser Ghidorah is like, well, maybe not with King of the Monsters Ghidorah. King of the Monsters Ghidorah is pretty strong, but Kaiser Ghidorah is essentially a world-ending version of King Ghidorah, so having the name Kaiser attached to an anteater that pretends his tongue is a guy in a fedora would be really funny.
Yeah, he's definitely like... Would this monster be the main villain of the movie? God, no. Mm-hmm. Is he going to be throwing in, like, monkey wrenches into the main, like... Is he going to be more on, like, the Rodan side of things? Where he's not... He's kind of an underling doing his own thing? Absolutely.
Hey, they've used mind control plenty of times in the Godzilla movies. So it just makes sense that he did it instead of a random alien race.
Yeah. Will he show up in the anime and have, or like a TV show and have a small little solid arc? Absolutely.
Yeah, that sounds great. It almost sounds like something from the Godzilla TV show that was ran with the 1998 Godzilla in the 2000s. It was a pretty good show, actually. even though I don't like the original design, but they had like mecha versions of the 1998 Godzilla and stuff, and they had like the Monster of the Week kind of format. So I could
just
see
like
him
Power
fitting
Rangers.
right in. I could see him fitting right in with the Showa crew on Monster Island doing shit, bullying all the little guys.
Yeah.
All right, so we have.
Oh god.
Got it.
He got
And what's his name?
Kaiser
Garthalax?
Gorthalax.
Gorthalax,
yeah.
Gorthalax. Okay, that's a pretty cool name. I think I'll name mine.
You just witnessed my D&D character naming process where I just sit there and I make sounds.
I was gonna say it, but
No, that's literally what happens. Like, except when we're playing D&D. Usually I'm like more prepared with a list of names, but sometimes if I have to think of one on the spot, you might not hear it, but it's just me going like Hallerk. There we go. Hallerk Heowen. All right, now we're good.
Nice.
And
I think I'll name mine Plasmochi.
Oh, that sounds like a dessert.
Similar to like Orochi, which is
Orochimaru,
or
yes.
like the 8-headed dragon, like Plasma. And he doesn't have all 8 heads. He's just one-headed dude, but he could.
Just like Orochimaru from Naruto, he also has one head.
All right, Carter.
Also, he has a giant snake summon named Manda. Thought I mentioned that earlier.
Really?
Yes.
That's pretty cool. I wonder if Manda means like snake in Japan. That'd be pretty funny. Well, Manda's first movie was something called Atragon, which is a really bad movie from like the 50s, where it's like a sub drama where this like a literal sub, like where these people go in a sub to like the deep ocean and Manda's down there, and they fight it. And then the Atragon actually comes back in Final Wars as the main hull for the humans to like go wake up Godzilla and stuff. But that original movie is like trash. Anyway, Carter.
Okay, so I have 2 different ideas. The first one is it would be kind of moose based. First,
yes, I'm on board immediately.
We need more herbivores.
Yeah, I've done more research on moose and deer than I would like to admit for my D&D stuff. And mooses.
Manda means lovable. Oh no, wait, that's just a generic one. It's just like Amanda, short for Amanda. Nope, that's not it. My bad. Continue.
This idea of like a forest specific, like I like the idea of a forest specific kaiju who just like is literally a sleeping giant, and then like wakes up and you realize like all the moss and all the rocks and stuff are just on its skin, or like on its fur, and then it like steps up and is like literally the size of a mountain when it stands up.
So it's like the Torteras in Detective Pikachu.
Yes, very partial to that scene.
It's a good scene.
Yeah. In terms of like powers, I'm trying to think of what unique it would have. Obviously, it has antlers, so I assume it's just brute strength a lot of times. It just has this like natural.
I was gonna say it should shoot a beam out from in between its antlers.
That would be kind of cool. Or like
a lot of times, like Mothra and stuff, like when it's a more natural creature, they'll use like its scales or its fur as like a defense. So like Baragon doesn't have anything, but he like digs, when he makes holes and shit.
Dig a tunnel, dig a tunnel.
So I originally was thinking like self-healing, like he has like the moss that like goes over and covers his wounds.
Yeah, something like that. And then I like the idea of like it being like a creator of life. So I like the idea that where it steps, stuff grows. In general, I like that idea with the King of the Monsters stuff, where it's like these guys are basically like terraformers. Like places they go have huge, like, just basically regrow. So maybe something along those lines. The other idea I had, and we can like commit to one or the other, is the idea of like a hive mind sort of thing. So it's like an amalgamation of hundreds of smaller critters. I guess I'm defaulting to rats because I got to stay on brand, but like sort of gremlin rodent types who like form a giant version of themselves and stomp around.
That's so you want a kaiju version of a Rat King, is what you're saying?
Basically, yes. But
listen, I mean, they've done it before. It's not outlandish. Destroya was like that. Destroya started off as like 30 little like 20-foot crabs monsters, and then they all formed together into a big crab that's like however many stories tall, and then he gets more energy and he becomes Destroya. So it's not unlikely, and Destroya is one of the most powerful kaiju that's ever existed. So
classic Boulder Snorf.
So I do
we
lean
need to
toward the
kill
moose
Godzilla.
idea. Yeah, I lean toward the moose idea only because, like, I like the idea of a hive mind because it's like, oh, they can scatter and it just becomes harder for Godzilla to fight them because, like, they're everywhere all the time, squeaking, sending their secrets, stealing pizza.
Squeaking, annoying him, biting his ankles.
No,
Yeah,
the ankles.
snipping at his ankles, giving him rabies. But I like the idea of the moose just because, like, I don't know. I hold firm in my heart that it should at least theoretically be, like, most kaiju should at least theoretically be able to be portrayed by a guy in a big suit. With the
Fair.
exception
Yeah.
of, like, the birdish ones, where you just do a puppet.
Even then, they have scenes in the original Mothra and Rodan where there's people in suits.
Yeah. Plus, I don't know. I think. What
what's
would it
his
be
name?
called? I'd probably just default to, like, something with, like, a moose's Latin name is Alcis alcis, so maybe like an
Yep.
Alcius or Alcyon. Although that sounds
Alcyon
like
sounds
Pokemon.
cool.
That's an evolution.
Let me think. Trying to think of what they like go for usually. Yeah, I mean they use a lot of Latin names, I would say.
It's an easy shorthand.
Do we call it like Alceroga?
Oh, I kind of like that. I'd go with
I don't know if that just
Alciroga.
came. It sounds very similar to a not so well known monster from the newer movies.
Greg.
He's a big mammoth. No, not Greg. I know of the Greg.
Honestly, that was a big inspiration for mine. I like that silly guy. I want
I can't.
Is
His
it-
name is.
Is it the mammoth that just has like those two giant tusks but not like a trunk?
Yeah, he has like two giant tusks, but he also got like gorilla hands, so he like walks on
Yeah.
his hands.
I need him in the next movie.
He's
Yeah, I like that.
called. Oh my god, what is he called? Like Titano or something? I know this. The giant spider's called Scylla because I was really upset that it wasn't Kamunga, the original giant spider. Then there's Rodan, obviously. There's that guy, and then there's
Greg,
Greg. There's Greg, who's in Godzilla vs Kong.
of course.
And then you got the skull crawlers, the whatever those bats are called. What are they called? Y bats or something like that. What is that guy's name? Oh my god, it's gonna drive me nuts. Wait, I'm gonna look it up. But that like Earth Protector monster, you know, similar to Mothra, but more on brute strength. Behemoth is his name.
Behemoth. Ah. Interesting.
He's mammoth.
He's what? You were like cutting out there for a second.
He's an ape mixed with a sloth mixed with a mammoth.
Now that's a combo creature.
Oh, and then the other one was Methuselah, which is the rock guy that shows up in that movie as well. He's only seen for like a second, but and then Scylla, it's a spider, Ghidorah.
Francois.
Oh, spider freaks me out.
Alrighty. Let's wrap things up. Tom, where
Yes.
can we find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitch and YouTube as KaijuCatcher757. I do currently I'm doing Pokemon Infinite Fusion Nuzlocke content. Right now it's just VODs on the channel, but I do plan on doing edited content once I finish my current run. I stream twice a week, usually sometimes 3 times a week. I'm probably going to be streaming tomorrow as well. So Thursday. I know this video is not going to be out for a while, but
Nope, not for a couple days.
Usually I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
So
also
this
on
video
Twitter
should come out on a
as-
Wednesday, just to continue the
just so,
continuity
just so
of
that
you.
one thing I said will keep continuity.
Yes.
I usually stream on Tuesday, Thursday. I'm also on Twitter at KaijuCatcher757. I think I'm also on Threads now. But I haven't really been on. I downloaded Threads because I thought it was going to be this big thing that everyone was going to switch over from Twitter, but nobody's really left Twitter, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so I'd say Twitch and YouTube are kind of my main things right now.
Nice.
When I'm not guest starring on Castpod.
Aw. Thanks for making us an afterthought, buddy.
You're not an afterthought.
Aw.
The Disney desk is an afterthought because they still haven't got me on there to talk about the SpongeBob video game.
Right, we're working on it. I promise I will.
The month is almost over.
On our YouTube.
You better. Anyway,
the
yeah,
Castpod YouTube or the Disney Desk YouTube?
Disney Desk YouTube. I mean, I can put it on.
Okay, I assume isn't Carter like technically a third member of Castpod at this point?
Yeah.
I am.
Nice.
He is.
If I had more things to talk about, I would apply for that position, but I don't.
You want to apply for the fourth man position, Tom?
Sure.
All right.
What are you going to talk about? Because I don't have any idea.
All right, I'll make you an application.
Okay. Send it to me. I'll fill it out, maybe.
Oh, no, it's going to be on the next episode you're on. It's going to be a live interview.
Are we going to give a teaser for that next episode, or should we keep it a secret?
We're going to keep it a secret because I don't know much more than that. Now I got to double down on that idea. Welcome to Castpod.
It's the one where me and Calum explain you know what to you.
Oh, yeah. The Dragon Ball explanation?
Dragon Ball explanation.
That's good.
And then the episode after that where you and Carter try and teach me and Calum how to do a fantasy draft.
Oh yeah, where we go the complete opposite end of the spectrum, where Kevin and Carter talk football with you two.
Exactly. You should just title it Calum and Tom try to understand football.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
I'm always down to talk Godzilla, so you just let me know. Or Pokemon or anything else that I'm interested in that I have marginally more knowledge about than the average person.
That's something we need to have you on for, is Castpod built a Pokemon World Part 2.
Oh my god.
But that's a different time.
That's a different time. We have to wait for...
Calum
to return from the...
To come back from Mexico.
From his birthplace.
Of Mexico, apparently.
His birthplace. It was in England, Mexico, Canada. We don't know where.
I have not said the same country twice.
No, that's part of the fun. You gotta figure it out.
Yeah,
viewers gotta figure it out.
Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego over here? All right, till next time. Exactly. Maybe Calum will be back from Brazil. Bye.
Not Brazil.